Hi again, Sophie Glenn here, and we're continuing our video series about the table saw. So now we're going right underneath the table saw here, and this is just to show you guys what it looks like underneath, because it's a little bit different than some of the other machines where it just has a push button, and it just pushes on and off. And we also have a couple of other wheels to talk about as well, which I mentioned in the first video, but just to give you guys a little bit more clarification on what it actually looks like. So first of all, we have our power switch here. So right now the whole machine is turned off, and to do that you just flick this guy down and you can flip it back on, and you'll notice that these little lights come on here. So right now it's just a steady green light, and that means green is go, so your table saw is ready to go. But just to show you guys again, so when you have this little red light that beep, well, it's not beeping on now, to turn it off for a couple seconds. So when you have this little red light that beeps, that means it's just the machine is thinking about what it's going to do. So just to make sure that before you start that you just have a steady green light going. And you can't see it on this side, but there's actually a chart here. So what's also nice about this machine that aside from measuring any kind of moisture, metal or meat that are in your piece of wood, it'll also not turn on if something else is going wrong with the machine. So for example, there's like a couple of little access doors here, particularly this one here. So there's a little chart which describes what each of the blinking lights means. So say the access door is open, it might like flash back and forth green and red, or it'd be like a steady red blinking light, or maybe the green light is blinking, or they're both not on. So each one of those different variations means something different. So if you're not sure what that means, and it's not turning on, you have like a varying light situation here, just get your shop tech, or myself in this case, and usually we can figure it out pretty quickly. So just to make sure that that is nice steady green light. So again, green is go, just like a stoplight, right? Or a traffic light rather. So if I were to turn, now since the machine is on, now I can go ahead and turn the saw on. So what I do is I pull this little toggle switch forward. So that turns it on. And to stop it, I just push it, stop. So now it's a flashing green light, so it's just powering down. So again, once it starts to be a steady green light again, just give it a second or two, and then it's ready to turn back on, right? So that's pretty easy. I'll describe these two wheels on the side here. So this front one here is to raise and lower the height of the blade. So right now it's pretty much at capacity, which is for this 10-inch blade, I think is about 3 inches, maybe 3.5 inches. So you'll never actually want to cut at that height, and I'll talk about that in the other videos. I can lower this down to the appropriate height. And again, the appropriate height is going to depend on your thickness of your piece of wood. So I can raise or lower this down. There should be a little lock on here, but for some reason mine is missing. So usually you can lock it into place whenever you set it at the right height, especially if you're doing multiple passes or making multiple cuts at the same height, then you can lock it into place and it should be good to go. Again, mine is not on here for some reason. I'll have to ask my shop tech. So anyway, so this is the wheel to raise and lower the height of the blade. And you'll notice too we have a wheel on the side here. So that's actually going to change the angle of the blade. So right now it's set at a 90-degree angle, and I do have a lock on this one, luckily. So if I unlock it, I can change the angle of the blade, right? So right now it's going pretty much at a steady angle. So I can go all the way down to a 45-degree angle, which is nice. So say that's my angle, right? You might have noticed that this little, if you can see through my body while I was standing in front of it, that this little miter gauge moved. Maybe I can just display it again. So you'll see this one moves while I turn that. Unless your shop tech has made this accurate, these are hardly ever accurate. So if you're going for a particular angle, I would just make sure to draw out your angle or use a combination square if you're going for a 45, just to make sure that it's at 45. You can even use a digital miter gauge for that. So that's pretty much that. So when you're done with it, you always want to make sure you set it back at 90. It usually kind of bottoms out at around 90, but again, you just want to take either a combination square, an engineer square, or even a digital miter gauge, and just make sure that's set back at 90 for the next person. Particularly if you're making like fine furniture pieces, and you need that table angle to be exactly 90 degrees. If it's even just a little bit off, that's going to really affect any kind of joinery that you need to do to those pieces of wood. So the more accurate you have this, the better. Again, especially if you're going for really precise angles, so say you need to make a hexagon and both your corners need to be both at exactly 30 degrees, so you can have 60-degree corners. You need to make sure that they're totally accurate, or else your whole thing's going to get thrown off. Because one little mistake here multiplied by a bunch of different angles becomes a really major mistake. So yeah, so that's just the bottom of the machine here. And that's it.